Welcome to the Firefly Tutors TV podcast, where real teachers from all over the country discuss real solutions for parents and educators alike. Here's your host, Marissa Johnston.
Hello and welcome to The Buzz, brought to you by Firefly Tutors TV, where we talk to administrators, educators, and parents all across the country about current topics affecting school children today. On the podcast today, we are speaking with a special guest. We're fortunate to have Eliana Farias with us. Eliana spent 7 years as an elementary teacher at Hooper Avenue Elementary in South LA, where she was recognized as Teacher of the Year. She also received recognition and awards for her time spent volunteering as an ESL teacher for the parents within the community. Eliana has worked for the Educare Foundation for over 25 years as a facilitator of personal growth workshops for K-12 students, parents, and staff, where she teaches interpersonal skills, team building, and leadership development. As a mom of two, Eliana has experience with traditional, private, and homeschool education. She is also one of Firefly Tutors' outstanding tutors. Thank you for joining us, Eliana.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure to be on the buzz, and I'm excited to be here.
Our topic today revolves around ways that parents can effectively present academic concepts to their learners to promote stronger comprehension and retention. In this episode, we'll present tips, tricks, and insight to help parents facilitate in-depth learning at home. Eliana, what are some proven strategies and techniques parents can use to present complex academic concepts to their students in a way that is still engaging and easy to understand, taking into consideration, of course, various learning styles and individual preferences?
Absolutely. What a great question, Marissa. First, I'd like just to say hello to all the parents out there and just encourage you to keep on moving. You're doing a great job. I know as a parent, it's tough out there, especially when you're homeschooling. There's a lot of challenges, and sometimes it's very challenging to address these questions. Like, you're struggling just to get through the day with academics, and now we got to make it engaging and fun at the same time. How do we do all of that, right? So a couple of things to address is, first of all, in order to make things engaging, you really need, first of all, to be okay yourself. You need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself as a parent, all your basic needs, all your essential self-care, so that you can be in a good place to want to make things engaging for your kids. Because to make things engaging, you really do need to go like that additional step. Not just present the academics and get through the work that needs to be done, but you need to put a little bit more effort into it. In order to do that, you need to be in a good place to be able to do that. Otherwise, you dread making things fun and engaging because you're just registering maybe as additional work to do. So a couple of things that I do with my clients and with the people that I work with is, first of all, you really need to assess who you're working with and assess your children in this particular case. It's like, know their love language. It's like, how do they interpret fun in their lives? Because everybody's different. So do they need you to be more silly and goofy? Do they need you to dress up? Do they need you to incorporate music? Do they need you to go outdoors? So it's really important to know their love language, because then you need to incorporate that in how you set up whatever it is you're trying to teach them. The other thing is, and recognize their learning styles. So it's like, what kind of learning style do they have? And for those parents that are new to homeschooling, there's different learning styles according to how they receive information. So it has to do with, are they more visual? Do they use their eyes more? Do they need to see images? Do they need to see colors? Are they more musical? Do they need music? Do they need you to sing, hum, and create songs? Do they need more explanation? Are they more verbal? Or are they just always moving, and do you need to create games for them in order for them to understand concepts? Or are they more logical? Do you need to just break things down to them so that it makes sense to them? Are they more social? Are you going to need to bring friends in and create games with other peers or with their siblings in order for them to participate? Or are they more solitary? Do they need to just kind of do it on their own? So it's important to create engaging activities. First, assess your children. So learn their love language and also figure out their learning style. Sometimes it changes according to their ages as they're developing. And also sometimes they have a couple. It depends on the situation. So I would start there in terms of this. And then we're going to discuss a couple more questions that I'll give you more concrete examples as we go. But I think that's like the foundation to start with.
That's great, Eliana. Now, I do have a follow-up question for you, and I'm kind of going
Sure.
to pull in your personal life. I know you are a mom of two wonderful young boys. What if parents have two children, three children, even more, who learn so differently from each other? How do you balance that?
Well, for example, at home, I have two very, very different kids, so I alternate them. So, for example, I'll focus on my older child, that with him, it's more logical. He just needs more of my attention. He needs to engage a little bit more with technology. So while I sit down and focus with him, my younger child, who's a TK, he's more playful. So I have him in another room with manipulatives. I have him do some activities, educational sites so that he's working on until I'm able to shift them and switch up.
Awesome. Very cool. As a talented tutor, can you elaborate on the techniques that parents can adopt to foster critical thinking and self-assessment skills in their children, even when they may not be very well versed in a particular subject?
Sure, absolutely. So there's 10 proven techniques for teaching and also for assessing what they're learning. And so, for example, you want to start always with having clear lesson goals. So what is your objective today? What is one thing you want your child to learn today according to their age? The second thing is to do show and tell. Like that's an easy way to find out what they're learning is when you ask them, can you tell me more about that? Or can you show me that? And you can see what information is actually being inputted and downloaded into them. Asking them questions. I think the KWL chart that teachers use a lot, which is checking, what do you already know about this subject? What do you want to know about this subject? And what did we learn? I think it's a great strategies that parents can use. Teachers use it all the time. Summarizing in graphics. If you use webs, to organize information, that's a great way for kids, especially because a lot of them don't like writing too much, or they don't have the skills fully developed. So doing graphic organizers really helps. For example, with my younger child, we'll do webs, but he'll draw it out, what it is that he's trying to do. And then my older child will come in and write some words that go along with them. And that's a great technique for them to express themselves and help them organize their ideas and assess what they're learning, how they're thinking, how they're breaking things down. And also plenty of practice. One of the things that I notice parents do is sometimes they don't give the child enough practice with a concept before moving to something else. For example, currently I was working with a sixth grader in math, and she was struggling a lot, but I noticed it was because it was moving too quickly and the the curriculum wasn't providing enough practice for her. So then what I did, I built in additional practice on that concept. I made sure she had it, that it was rote, and then we moved on to a different concept that builds her self-confidence and builds that mastery in that skill. Also, talking to the students, seeing how they're doing. One of the strategies that I do a lot with my kids in order to get them to talk, because when I would pick them up from school, when they were going to school, it's like, okay, how was your day, honey? Fine. What did you learn? Nothing. I was like, okay, how are we going to get to teenage years like this? So I was like, okay, how do I get them to talk to me in a simple way that kids can understand? So I was like, okay, everybody understands the traffic lights. So red light, yellow light, green light. So I said, okay, tell me a green light. Green light means something good that happened today. You're happy about it. It was good, green light. So then they would share one thing. I was like, okay, tell me something that was yellow light today. That was so-so. A friend was a little mean to me, or the teacher didn't give me enough time for this, or I didn't get to play with this toy. And then tell me any red lights. Was there anything that really upset you or that you think wasn't good? What was that? And that was really helpful to get them to talk. And that same principle I apply to anything that I'm teaching. So at the end of a session with a student, for example, ask them, okay, what was your green light today with our session? So they'll tell me, oh, I'm so happy that today I got through the challenge problem. What was your yellow light? Well, I noticed that I wasn't really remembering my multiplication facts. I got to brush up on my sevens. And any red lights? No red lights today. Or there might be a red light. And so that's a great way to break it down for students to self-assess, and also for you to assess how they're doing with everything that's happening. You can transfer that to anything that you're doing. Another thing is to just be flexible with them, that students are all learning at different times. So just because they're not showing you results right now doesn't mean it didn't get in there. It just means it might just need a little bit more time. Sometimes my kids totally surprise me because I think, okay, they're not getting it. I'm not receiving the feedback. I'm not hearing them say the words. And then all of a sudden we're brushing their teeth and there comes like, oh, mom, 8 times 8 is 64. And I was like, okay, where did that come from? We're brushing our teeth. But just because you walk away from a lesson doesn't mean the child's not continuing to work on it and it's developing it. So be flexible, let it go like the ocean waves. It has its time. And also teamwork, for example, with my child, my older one is learning dictionaries right now in the guides words. And I was like, great, you did fantastic. We got it. I was like, here's a dictionary, go teach your brother. So they'll go and sit down and here's a dictionary. It's a great way for me to listen in and see how much of it he understood. Can he transfer the information? And we know that usually a test for knowing whether you really know something is if you can teach it to somebody else. So
Yeah.
that's another way that parents can do, especially if you have several siblings in the home, is give them tasks, especially your older children. They like teaching and passing it on and being given chores or responsibilities to do. And also just remember to teach strategies, not just contests. For example, what I mean by that is like when we read a book, use the senses. Like I bring highlighters. I have different colors. I have different fun pens that I use. And so I get excited. I was like, oh my God, let's highlight this word pink. And look at this one. I'm going to use my special pen to underline this word. So that's a great way to take something that's a strategy. It's a formal strategy, proven strategy. How can we make it fun? Just putting some color in there. That's a visual and it'll make it fun for kids, especially. And you can do pens according to their ages. And the last thing is nurture metacognition. That just means give them time to like let the information in. Like for example, with my older child, we'll do our normal lessons, and then he'll have his own escuelita time. Escuelita means little school. So then he creates his own makeshift desk from Costco boxes. He gets to take notes anywhere on it or put stickers or whatever. And then he gets to do his version of what we just did. So then he'll do it his way. And then I get to just go see. He has a great time because he has the freedom to create and present whatever it is we did in his own unique way. And it's a fun way to assess that doesn't create more work for you. And it gives him the freedom that he needs and the time that he needs to really get and wrap his brain around everything that just got taught. So those are some strategies.
Those are great strategies. One of the things I heard you mention earlier that I would like to touch back on is a KWL chart. Now, for our listeners who may not be familiar with those three letters all put together, KWL stands for what do you know, what do you want to know, and what have you learned? And so, what we do as educators, homeschooling parents, everything like that, tutors, we present the topic to the students, and then we ask, okay, what do you already know about this? And we kind of gauge how familiar they are with the topic or the concept. And then we move into what is it we want to know more about? So we're kind of developing that engagement. We're creating that buy in for students to say, yeah, I want to know more about, why they dress the way they did if we're doing like a historical topic or something. Why did they wear those funny pants? I don't know. And then what did you learn is the follow up to that after the lesson, asking kids to think back. Okay, what's something new that you learned? What's something you feel stronger about as this concept, as we're learning this concept? So thank you for sharing that, Eliana. That is a fantastic resource for educators all around to use.
Absolutely. You're welcome, Marissa.
Yeah, and then I also loved what you mentioned about the stoplight, putting it into terms for students to understand, or learners or kids to understand, well, what was something that went well, what was something that went okay, what was something that maybe didn't go so well, but definitely putting it into a version that they really can connect with. But one thing I do really want to focus on there too, in order to get a student, a child, whomever, to share the red light, there also has to be a safe space created. And Eliana, it sounds like you have done a fantastic job of creating that safe space for your children, your learners, your students. They They feel that no matter what that red light might have been, they can share it with you. Because sometimes students build up this anxiety inside of them if something went poorly and they think that it's their fault, when really we're just trying to gauge how we can better support them.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in terms of red light doesn't necessarily mean something like a heavy, like something really bad
Sure.
happening to them. It depends really on their age. For example, my TK, his red light was he didn't get a second ice cream, or my second grader, they said no to a second slice of pizza.
Oh,
So it's a great way to get them to be okay with sharing things that they're upset. And so in the future, God forbid something does happen, they'll feel more comfortable sharing that, and also teaches them social emotion, like how to express their emotions, around it. Because I did hear a lot of parents in the previous podcasts, not the parents, the issue seemed to be is like, how do I get my kids to talk? Especially I worked a lot with
yes.
teenagers, and that was a common question parents had is like, my teenager doesn't talk to me. And we know that teenage years are very challenging years for them. But my
Sure.
thing was, well, did you spend the time when they were little developing dialogue with them so that when they get to teenage years and going through rough waters, at least you have that channel open? And for many parents, they hadn't, for many reasons. Some of them, they don't know how. Some of them is cultural. Some of them are just
Yeah.
working. They're busy. Some of them, they didn't know the importance of that. So this is a great way for especially parents we're working with are homeschooling. Your kids are young. This is the time to develop those skills. And the light method, I think, is very simple. And if you start it now, it'll build up as they grow.
Yes. Now, what do you recommend for parents who maybe didn't set that up in their children, in their child's early years, and now they have a teenager who's struggling to speak out and open up to them? Do you have tips,
Yeah,
tricks for
absolutely.
parents?
Absolutely. It's never too late to start now, is what I would tell them. So, with that said, I would say don't have the expectation that just because you're ready and you explain it to them, they're just suddenly going to get it and open up, because intimacy takes time to develop and it takes trust. And so, start it now. And I would tell them, you might need to start yourself now. And I think Star was one of the ones I mentioned in a previous podcast, that it takes time to develop in a safe space, like you mentioned. And so it might mean you being vulnerable first. So say,
Hmm.
you know what? This is my green light today, and share what your green light was at work. And then this is my yellow light, and this was my red light. And just have them listen in for a while. Eventually, like, hey, do you want to share? Do you have a green light today? And take the pressure off of them and let it have its time to develop, because it'll take a minute. They've had a parent that's been absent literally in that area for many years, and suddenly a parent's here and they're like, okay, wait, what happened here? Does that make sense? Or they may
Yes.
not. They might be ready to go. Finally, yes, I have a green light. I have a few things to say, mom.
Yeah.
So you'll have that spectrum of students.
Definitely. Now, what are some specific strategies that parents can implement to help their children better understand complex ideas by connecting them with real life situations and experiences?
Absolutely. I think one of the mistakes that we make as parents, and including myself when I was a teacher, is like, okay, we associate learning and education with a building. Okay,
Mm.
it happens from 7:30 till 3 o'clock, and that's it. After that, we don't talk and touch back on those subjects the rest of the day until next day. Same thing on the weekends or in the summers. And the great thing about homeschooling is like it's continuous, and even if you're not homeschooling, it can be continuous for you if you give it continuity. In some ways to do that is, first and foremost, you got to bring the fun into it. And it's one of the resources I'm going to mention later. But this is a great book, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. Is like, think about the subject that the students are studying right now. Think back on what your experience was with that subject when you were a little kid. Was it presented to you in a fun, engaging way or in a boring way? So if it was fun, great, copy those strategies and add to it. If it was boring, it's like, well, what would you have liked done differently? And apply that now that you have the opportunity to have your sons or daughters have a different experience with that subject. And then as an adult, you have the wisdom that comes with, okay, I learned the ABCs, And this is how they show up in real life. And then have them use you as a bridge between what they're learning at school as a concept, how they transfer, and how does that transfer that into real life. And to give you some concrete examples, for example, going to a supermarket with my 2 kids. If when my son was learning, my little one was learning colors, I was like, okay, you have a job as we're doing the shopping. They're in my little shopping cart. Okay, Sean, you are to spot or orange things if we're working with orange. So as we go, I was like, don't yell them out loud because, he's 3 or 4. I was like, I don't need no, just point to it. Say, point to it. And mama will get it. Okay. And so I would give him that role. And now my older child, he was doing adding. I was like, okay, you get to, Noah, you get to find items that are $2 or less. Obviously, I had taught that at home. It's like, so when you spy those things, you just point to them. Okay, don't drive me crazy because I still got to get the shopping done. So that's like a little bridge activity that you can do. And you can change that up according to whatever it is that they're learning. Another thing we do is in the cars, we play the I Spy. So that's a little basic game. Change the content of that. So for example, we're learning geography with my older child. So, okay, we're in the car. Let's play 10 minutes of I Spy different states on the license plates. So then we do that. For my younger child, it's like, okay, he's learning the letters. Okay, license plates with the letter S. Does that make sense? So you can adapt it, whatever content you're doing with whatever is going on around you. Another idea would be on the field trips, like we drive a lot because I have relatives an hour and a half away from us. So we spend a lot of time in the cars, and I love technology, but I don't like kids being on tablets all day. So we don't do that. Instead, I have equipped my car with school supplies. I took them shopping. They got to choose their supplies. So they have everything organized. And so in cars, if we do a field trip, it's like, okay, if we went to the museum, okay, we get back in the car, go ahead and show me what you learned, what you liked. What was your your green light? What was your yellow light? What was your red light? Show me. And so they do that, and it keeps them entertained. Then we go home. We have something to talk over dinner because they'll produce their artwork or their journals, whatever it is they did, and we hang them up in the kitchen. And it's a great way for the family to be all engaged in discussing and bringing to life everything that we are learning. Does that make sense? So you keep it continuous throughout the day.
Yes. And also I really want to focus on what you said about making learning fun. When you brought up, think back to when you learned these concepts. Was it boring, or was it fun? And it's hard to even recall those concepts that were boring because we didn't commit them to memory. It's all about the engagement. It's about having those meaningful discussions and, you know, just making memories of what you're learning. And some of
Absolutely.
the most fun that I know I ever had as a kid was doing the presentations. Clearly I am a big old ham,
Yeah.
but being able to get up in front of my classmates and really show what I had learned, and that must have been my love language. I know that
Absolutely.
for other kids that absolutely put the fear into them. They were like, "No, I don't want to get up in front of someone." But figuring out, how best a child can interact with what it is they're learning and make
Absolutely.
it meaningful to them. I think that is an excellent strategy and point to make.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah. The issue with parents is like, it was for me because I did not really play as a child. We all
Okay.
have different childhoods, and I had a mother that was very, very controlling and would hit me a lot. So then I learned to be a very adult child. So
Yes.
when I found myself as a mother, and I was like, oh my God, I have to play. I don't know how to play. Oh my
Okay.
God. Or I would start playing. I was like, okay, I am so done after 2 minutes. How long do we have to do this for? So for people like that, you really need to get to work. This is a great
Yeah.
way to start. And I love Mandy Moore. She is a CEO of an organization called MOPS. And I loved her childhood. She had a completely 360 childhood from me, different, because her parents would say, Mandy, your job today is go out and play. and don't come back until you have a great adventure to tell us. I was like, oh my God, if my mom would ever say that to me, my mom was like, no, you stay here. Don't touch anything. Don't do anything. Don't get anything dirty. Just
Right.
don't move until I come home, you know?
Yeah.
And so if you're that kind of parent, there's hope for you. You get to go back and figure out your inner child. How do you play? And
Mhm.
one great strategy is like observe your kids. I had to just sit back. I was like, I don't know how to play, but they know how to play
Yeah.
like naturally. So let me just sit and watch them and observe. Okay, they think that's cute. I don't, but they do. Okay, and they like silly. Okay, now they're changing it. And then you can just copy them. Does that make sense? They're like your play
Oh yeah.
teachers. Just copy what they're doing. Like I get home yesterday and my little one comes to greet me and he's like screaming and he turns as he comes and then he starts like hopping on my leg. And I was like, okay, that's a very unique way of saying hello. Let me copy it. I was like, okay. And I started doing the same thing. It reduces my stress level.
Yeah.
It mimics the behavior to him because he's like, he thinks he can relate to mommy because like mommy gets me. It creates connection between us. And it's just a great thing. It just feels good. Does that make sense? So learn how to play. If
Yeah.
you are a great kid and you had a great child, great. Pass that on and have your kids add to that conversation. And if you have had trauma or you had bad experience, well, go back and fill in the gaps, and you
Yeah.
have a great opportunity with your kids right now.
Definitely. Oh, that is adorable. And I mean, also, you're creating a judgment-free zone. You're just really solidifying the idea that they can be who they want to be in front of you. And that is so important for children.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the homeschooling provides that opportunity. And
Yeah.
also another strategy that you could do is, like they say here all the time, hire a tutor, because hiring a tutor is bringing in an outside person that can model for you different strategies to teach your child that you didn't even think possible.
Yeah.
I know that some parents just sit and watch from a distance how I interact with their kids because they can tell I have a wealth of experience. I come prepared with a bunch of my bags with different styles of learning and this and that, and I apply it. And so by watching, they understand how somebody else will do their job a little bit different without judgment. It's just basically bringing somebody in that's going to bring new ideas, new creativity, new ways of doing things into your home. And that's another great tool as a parent to utilize if it's at your disposal. It's just bringing in somebody in just to give you some other examples, expand the horizons a little bit more of things that you could be doing.
Yes. And I know, I think sometimes there's a hesitation to do that because they're thinking, well, it only works when the tutor does it. It won't work when I do it, stuff like that. But let me tell you a little inside knowledge in the teaching world. Teachers are, I don't want to say this the wrong way. I don't want it taken the wrong way, but we steal good ideas. We walk by someone's classroom and we see them doing something or something that's just working magically. And we look at it and we go, I'm going to try that. Maybe I can make it work for me. And it's not always that you have to do it exactly as the tutor did it, as the other teacher did it, whatever. You have to make it work for you. If the way that a tutor presents something is just not your style, you can't make it work that way, tailor it a little bit. You know, turn it into something that kind of fits you, but still benefits your child the way that it did when the tutor did it with them.
Absolutely.
Reinforce.
Great points, Marissa, because it can be intimidating for parents. Like I said at the very beginning, you have so much on your plate sometimes because we
Yes.
understand that there's all sorts of parents. There's the parents that are just struggling to get through the day. There are the
Right.
parents that are just ready to go, give me the next strategy. And those are the gift. And then you have the gifted, talented parents, right, that are just natural
Hmm.
at it. And so we have also that gamut of parents as well. So it depends where you're at, how you take the next step. But if you're a beginner parent, for example, when I started homeschooling my kids a couple of years ago, I literally panicked just because I'm an educator and you would think I have all the skills, and I do, but I was under such stress under the circumstances that I was in that I felt completely overwhelmed by it because I was like, oh my God, I have my kids 24/7. It's literally just me because my husband was traveling a lot.
Hmm.
And that on top of cooking and cleaning and groceries and finances and running a company and homeschooling like the whole day, that was very challenging. So, and the fact that I wasn't really playing a lot, how can I think about playing when I'm under such stress,
Right.
And so I started with something simple. I saw this at the Dollar Tree and I was like, how cute. And I walked past it. And then something told me, go get it. And I thought, but I have 2 boys. They're like, not for the boys, for you. And so for me, and I was like, yes. And so what I did was, at that time, was taking homeschooling too seriously. Like there was no fun in it. It was a chore. We have to get through this. Oh my God. And so I would just put this on. I feel silly putting it on, but when I would put it on, it would remind me to be silly, to have fun. And it would remind me that I'm teaching 2 little kids. I'm not teaching 2 college students. Does that make sense? So it helps me switch mode from mama stressed out, I got to get everything done. I got to get these kids, to college and the next test and all this, to I'm educating my kids. And I want to do it in a fun way so that they still love learning when they graduate, and that's a task in itself. So use things around you that you can tailor to your needs at this time to help you have fun teaching your kids. And that's just going to rub off on them in the education that they're receiving.
If you enjoyed our discussion today, please like Firefly Tutors on all your social media hubs like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Find us on Pinterest, where we pin all of our favorite resources for parents and tutors. At Firefly Tutors, we believe every student deserves the opportunity to develop to their highest potential. See you next time on The Buzz.